Steve. Come on, really? But how come one particular continent has produced so many frightening species? Looks like Australia played a significant role in shaping many animals just by being Australia.
Ah! No! Stop! No!
But don't get the wrong idea. Steve and I really love Australia. It's a wonderful place. It's just very unusual. Check out this adorable and carefree little thing. It's a tiger quoll, and it's just so cute. And that tail. Tiger quolls help keep insect pests in check. They're totally cool living near humans without causing any trouble. They're pretty much perfect, except for one tiny catch. They happen to be the ancestors of these creatures. When Australia separated from the rest of the world, tiger quolls were isolated from many other animals. Then, somewhere between 10 and 15 million years ago, a couple of tiger quolls decided it was time for a change, and they chose violence. This is how a whole new branch of their lineage appeared, the Tasmanian Devils. They were 15% larger and 50% heavier than the creatures you see on your screens, and we're all very lucky that these Tasmanian Devils have shrunk a bit since then. These creatures are way too aggressive. I won't go as far as calling them real monsters, but certain examples speak for themselves. In 2012, Tasmanian Devils were introduced to Maria Island east of Tasmania. Not by accident, but with a very noble purpose in mind: to create a new population of animals and prevent the species from being wiped out. But it soon turned out that the decision was not a great one. Like any relocation of animals to new places, Tasmanian Devils felt too comfortable on the island, and 28 of them quickly grew to 100. Not only did the predators actively breed, but they wiped out 3,000 breeding pairs of little penguins, jeopardizing the entire population. Actually, the Tasmanian Devils didn't care which penguins to kill, young, old, adults. They were happy to eat even short-tailed shearwaters as well as some other birds. In short, despite the warnings of many researchers, the Tasmanian Devil Rescue Program has put a whole bunch of birds at risk. Tasmanian Devils also have quite a temper. Remember that character from Looney Tunes? Well, the real-life Tasmanian Devils do share something in common with them. When the Tasmanian Devil feels threatened, it goes into berserk mode, growls, lunges, and grinds its teeth. It also makes otherworldly, creepy noises that can sound really diabolical. And while a great many animals prefer a solitary lifestyle, when it comes to the Tasmanian Devil, I think this is due to its temper, especially since all those eerie cries are designed primarily to scare off its own kin, though actually these cries are used much more often. No, these animals aren't trying to kill each other, they're trying to mate. Yeah, even the Tasmanian Devil's courtship looks violent. And how do you like the fact that these animals eat their prey whole? Not like pythons, Tasmanian Devils just eat everything. Soft tissue, organs, bones, anything's good enough. Their jaws can generate great force to tear hard prey apart. Tasmanian Devils are said to have the strongest bite relative to the body mass of any living predatory mammal, with a force of 553 newtons. By the way, what about the ancestor of the Tasmanian Devil? Their extinct relative was larger and looked like something between modern devils and a hyena. According to scientists, it was almost certainly a very active predator with an even stronger bite. The diet of the ancient Tasmanian Devil was 75% fresh meat, which means it hunted anything it could reach. Modern Tasmanian Devils are mostly scavengers. The ancient beast lived in the forests of northwestern Australia during the late Miocene period, which lasted from 12 to 5 million years ago. Then, due to climate change, the animal went extinct. If that hadn't happened, the creature would have grown into a massive beast today due to island gigantism. Can you imagine a vicious, aggressive predator with a mega-strong bite and the size of a tiger? I don't even want to imagine this. So here's the question. How come those adorable tiger quolls transform into Tasmanian Devils? They were doing just fine. Well, it all comes down to Australia breaking away from the rest of the world. When this happened, there was a rather limited number of animals on its territory. Of the mammals, there were mostly marsupials, which had to evolve in very different directions so that each could claim a certain ecological niche. This is how the thylacine and the marsupial lion stepped into the roles typically filled by predators like wolves and big felines around the world. They even share a striking resemblance, just with an Australian touch. In this image, you can see the animals and their marsupial counterparts from Australia. At the same time, any place on the planet needs scavengers, animals that'll clean the soil of dead carcasses so that bacteria and germs don't spread uncontrollably. Australia's no exception. So the tiger quolls simply had no choice. Some of them had to take on this role, and that's how they became the Tasmanian Devils. You know how sometimes your parents pick your future job before you even get a say? What is this place? Where am I? You're in Australia. No! Why are they so demonic? Well, they probably had to become so to compete with the other, not-so-friendly creatures of Australia. And it's not just tiger quolls that have undergone a similar transformation. Have you seen wombats? They're amazing. They look like miniature bears now, but Australia once did what it does best with its wombat ancestors. Thousands of years ago, the continent was home to a group of giant marsupials that probably weighed more than a ton, wielding long claws and had weird elbows that couldn't bend. These animals belonged to a family called Pelorchestidae, and likely they first appeared more than 20 million years ago and may have survived until 50,000 years ago. That is, they coexisted with the first humans on the continent. Scientists think that they remotely resembled a giant wombat with a large tail. Moreover, it was found that as evolution progressed, these animals kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. This is what their jaw looked like, for example. Even though a horse-sized wombat might seem intimidating with its razor-sharp claws, these creatures were most likely herbivores. Using their tough yet powerful claws, giant wombats were skilled at munching on vegetation, and they would occasionally stand on their hind legs while eating. Given their size, ancient wombats wouldn't have been able to climb trees or live in them like modern marsupials. To become unique Australian species, the animals had to make their way to Australia first. Australia was once part of the southern supercontinent Gondwana, which also included South America, Africa, India, and Antarctica. Gondwana began to break up 140 million years ago. Australia separated from Antarctica and remained in relative isolation. This is what the planet looked like 60 million years ago. And this is 40 million years ago. Basically, animals all over the rest of the planet could travel any, even great distance. Only the animals of Australia remained sort of trapped. They were shaped and evolved by the continent's unique climate and geology, because to a certain extent, Australia was also isolated from global climate change. While the other continents grew colder and their inhabitants died out or changed beyond recognition, Australia preserved the unique fauna of Gondwana, with some modifications, of course. See this line? Not a single animal except maybe birds could cross it. The animals living in Australia had to get used to a more confined lifestyle. Around 15 million years ago, the weather started getting drier on the continent, but tropical and wet spots still remained. That mix of things led to the rise of lots of unique animals you won't find anywhere else. Stick insects are insects that feed on leaves and look like these very leaves. They've come up with some pretty quirky shapes to hide from predators. In Australia, there are around 150 stick insect species, and some of them are the biggest in the entire world. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is what stick insects look like elsewhere, and this is what they've become in Australia. One interesting Australian stick insect is Ecdytosoma tiaratum, also called the Maclay's spectre. The females of this species have very large bodies, but also have wings that are too short so they can't fly. Now imagine a creature 8 inches long with numerous spines and extensions on its face and legs, including a tuft of spines on the back of its head. Both males and females assume a threatening posture in case of danger, standing up on their front and middle legs and pointing their abdomen upwards or to the side, as if they were something like a scorpion. If the abdomen is touched, they throw their legs back in defense, and the spines on them may well pierce human skin. As a bonus, adults make clicking noises and release a defensive odor reminiscent of toffee. Yes, this self-defense technique will never work with small kids. In addition, males may try to scare off predators by flashing their wings open. They look quite intimidating, but fortunately they can't bite and they eat leaves only. But how come that common stick insect became like this? It's simple. Their frightening appearance was shaped by the aggressive environment around them and the need to somehow protect themselves from it. Yes, to the human eye, they look scary, but to a predator's eye, they're just a leaf. A leaf that smells like toffee. The Goliath stick insect had a different story. These stick insects rank among the largest in Australia, with males measuring 4 to 6 inches and females ranging from 6 to 8 inches in body length. They too have learned classic camouflage techniques, evolving to resemble a leaf or tree branch. The camouflage is enhanced by side-to-side swaying of the body, which is thought to mimic the swaying of leaves and branches in the wind. Goliath stick insects can also spread their wings and assume a threatening pose. And if things get serious, they're not afraid to give a painful whack with their hind legs that scares off predators. So what's so different about them? Oh, these guys have gone a little further than their kin. Goliath stick insects are known to prey on insect-eating and omnivorous birds. Birds! This stick is hunting birds! Although to be fair, they mostly consume plants. Australian stick insects are pretty clever at deceiving others and don't just limit themselves to looking like sticks. They start imitating seeds even before they're born. And when they're young, they act and look like ants. And only when they grow up do they transform into either leaves or sticks. You'd think it'd be hard for them to spot each other with all this disguise, but they actually use pheromones to communicate, so it's not a problem at all. After mating, the female lays eggs that drop onto the forest floor, and the whole cycle starts over again. Now let's try to figure out the reasons why Australian stick insects are so Australian. As I said, it's all about a more aggressive environment they had to deal with. Scientists have found that the diversity of forms and species of stick insects came about after the dinosaurs went extinct 66 million years ago. When the dinosaurs were gone, birds appeared, and all sorts of predatory mammals that stick insects had to learn to hide from. Australia and its territories are home to about 800 species of birds. This is really a lot. In fact, it's believed that about 60% of the world's passerine bird population originated from here. And again, most of Australia's unique features can be attributed to its isolation from other continents. Once separated, there were hardly any predators around, and that gave birds the perfect chance to thrive. Not only did native species flourish, but birds from other parts of the world also dropped by from time to time. What were the stick insects supposed to do? They had to mix things up and diversify their looks. Just looking like sticks and leaves wasn't enough anymore. It's a pity that we don't have a clear understanding of the origins of stick insects, including who they evolved from and into. Unlike mammals with their durable bones, insect bodies aren't preserved well, making it almost impossible to find traces of them after millions of years. However, all the stick insects on Earth had a common ancestor, and it was those insects who found themselves in Australia that became so unusual and cool. How can you not be impressed by the fact that stick insects know how to produce offspring after death? Scientists have discovered that even if a stick insect is eaten by a bird, it still has a chance to procreate. It's simple. When a bird eats a stick insect, the eggs inside the insect can pass through the bird's digestive system without any harm. And guess what? Those eggs might even hatch inside the cozy warmth of bird poop. I can't believe I just said that. Sounds familiar? No wonder, because that's what many plants do with their seeds. And now it turns out that stick insects not only look like plants, they act like plants, expanding their habitat. And even if it's not the primary way for stick insects to disseminate their genes, you have to agree, being able to reproduce after death is an incredibly cool skill. Australia is often known for having an abundance of creepy insects, giving it the reputation of being the hub of all things crawly and spooky on Earth. However, the truth is, Australia is simply teeming with insects in general, rather than having an unusual number of scary ones. Out of approximately 200,000 animal species discovered in Australia, a whopping 96% are invertebrates, with 75% of these being insects. It's this significant percentage that creates the illusion of the country being a hotbed for the creepiest creatures, but it's all about the numbers. When it comes to unique species, Australia is home to an impressive number of them. Australia counts around 300 species of land mammals, and an impressive 90% of them can only be found within the country's borders, not considering those in captivity or introduced by humans elsewhere. Moreover, reports suggest that about 70% of birds and nearly 90% of reptiles in Australia are also native to this remarkable land. Few places on Earth can boast such extraordinary figures. All around the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Africa, animals were on the move, migrating long distances and getting used to new surroundings. Whereas in Australia, animals just hung tight. Large-scale movements were taking place along with the entire continent. So that's how we ended up with a whole bunch of unique animals. Do you know who my favorite Australian endemic animal is? The platypus. Platypuses are an evolutionary absurdity. Nature just took an otter, a duck, a lizard, and then added a little venom, and that's how we got a platypus. In 1799, the first scientist to examine the preserved body of the platypus concluded that it was a fake made from several animals. They decided that someone had sewn a duck beak onto the body of a beaver, and frankly, I can't blame them. Who in their right mind would believe that nature would create something like that? Back then, the scientists just didn't realize what Australia was capable of. It all started 280 million years ago when mammal-like reptiles diverged from the lineage they shared with birds and other reptiles. About 80 million years after this event, egg-laying mammals separated from the general mammalian lineage. This small, strange branch of the genealogical tree is the platypus and 4 species of echidnas. In a sense, they're somewhere between a lizard and what we consider a mammal. If you're a little confused, this image here clearly shows how it all went down, and also how the ancestor of the platypus ended up in Australia. Meet Steropodon, the animal destined to remain isolated. Before becoming a platypus, it first evolved into Monotrematum. It took about 60 million years, but since then, platypuses have remained virtually unchanged. They've reached evolutionary perfection, so to speak. Look, the platypus belly's not like other mammals. There's definitely something missing. The thing is, the platypus milk seeps out through pores in its belly rather than through nipples like the rest. Another incredible adaptation is the way platypuses forage for food. They close their eyes, ears, and nose underwater and find prey by sensing electrical fields with their duckbills. Their venom is found in the spurs on the hind legs of the males, which is also totally unique. If some science fiction writer came up with such a creature, everyone would accuse him of being completely unrealistic. Well, how could such a thing exist? The interesting thing is that no one knows why platypuses just decided to stop evolving and stayed like this. Over millions of years, they haven't become more like birds, reptiles, or mammals. Perhaps the reason is Australia itself. And perhaps it's isolated nature again. By the way, do you know which country has the most venomous animals? Nope, not Australia. Honorable first place goes to Mexico with 80 venomous species, followed by Brazil with 79 species, while Australia has only 66. Actually, it's obvious that the number of venomous species is directly related to a warm climate. This rule works even in the USA. Look, the closer to the equator, the more venomous the fauna becomes. There are exceptions to the rule, of course, but the logic is simple. The most venomous creatures are cold-blooded animals such as snakes, spiders, and jellyfish. They simply can't survive in cool climates. It's also believed that the production of venom is quite energy-consuming, so instead of becoming venomous, animals use their resources to defend against the cold. I mean, why bother having venom if you can freeze to death somewhere under a log? At this point, some of our viewers might say, what about Canada? There are also venomous snakes. Why? Well, the habitat of these snakes is limited to southern Canada, and they avoid cold seasons by hibernating. Australia's scorching, dry climate makes it a perfect environment for venomous organisms to thrive. And speaking of which, have you heard about how global warming could push venomous animals further north? Yeah, I don't really want to think about that either. Because even the plants in Australia are damn venomous. Some of them cause pain so excruciating that it doesn't go away for weeks or even months. And according to a recent study, plants in the Dendrocni genus produce a toxin not much different from spider venom. I'll say it again in case you didn't understand. The plant produces spider venom. Well, almost. It's covered in tiny needle-like appendages that look like fine hairs but act like hypodermic needles. Through these needles, toxins are injected into the body upon contact with the skin. Turns out the toxin targets the same pain receptors as spider venom. This may be an example of convergent evolution. That is an evolution that causes similar traits to appear in unrelated species. So unrelated that one species is an animal and the other is a plant. Actually, such evolution is often driven by similar environmental pressures and lifestyles, which means, yes, the continent has caused so much pressure that even plants here prefer to use venom to defend themselves. Actually, if you ask people to name Australia's deadliest creatures, they're likely to give you an impressive list of snakes, spiders, and sharks that can kill humans. Maybe jellyfish and octopuses would be on it too. But who really tops the list? The honeybee. Doesn't sound threatening enough to you? Meanwhile, this hardworking insect, first introduced to Australia in 1822, kills 1 or 2 Australians a year. On average, sharks claim even fewer lives annually, and the number of deaths caused by spider bites in the country is also lower. For most people, a bee sting causes only localized pain and swelling. However, it's believed that up to 3% of the population is allergic to honeybee venom, and they most likely don't even know it. Between 2000 and 2013, approximately 42,000 people ended up in the hospital due to stings, and some of these cases resulted in fatalities. Out of these incidents, bee, wasp, and hornet stings accounted for 31% of the hospitalizations, surpassing Australia's infamous venomous predators like spiders and snakes. The reason for the high percentage of deaths resulting from bee stings is rather strange. When someone is bitten by a snake or spider, he naturally goes to the hospital. But we tend to underestimate bees until it's too late.
What the hell? Oh my God, no way.
Some seriously believe that the most dangerous animals in Australia are bees. But if you check out global stats, bees ranked only 16th in causing fatalities in 2022. So are Australian bees kind of special? Or maybe their potential victims are just so used to dealing with loads of venomous creatures that they don't really fret over some bees. Well, until scientists run proper studies, it's too early to jump to conclusions.
Send an ambulance, please. Send an ambulance, I'm bleeding to death.
A few years ago, there was a 911 call where a man was freaking out, asking for an ambulance because he was scared he'd bleed out. All because he'd been attacked by the most dangerous bird in the world. Imagine this, a 130-pound modern dinosaur with deadly claws that can jump 5 feet high and aim its dagger-like feet at a target while airborne? No wonder zookeepers use shields when dealing with cassowaries. But even they don't always help, because cassowaries are creatures that are very difficult to run away from. Not only can these birds run, but they can reach speeds of up to 31 miles per hour in a dense forest. In addition, cassowaries are good swimmers. They can cross wide rivers and swim into the sea. Cassowaries are also omnivores. While other birds may consume meat too, cassowaries are true experts when it comes to being omnivorous. They're not picky eaters and are willing to eat anything that can fit in their mouths. Is it meat? Is it alive? Is it dead? Doesn't really matter. There's a reason I compared these birds to dinosaurs. Cassowaries are incredibly ancient creatures dating back to around 60 million years ago during the Cretaceous period when non-avian dinosaurs ruled the Earth. Interestingly, that's also when the platypus, with its resemblance to the modern one, first appeared. Due to their ancient nature, cassowaries still retain some characteristics shared with dinosaurs, such as their 3-toed feet and respiratory system. While all birds have descended from dinosaurs, cassowaries seem to have kept their dino legacy alive and kicking. And although scientists are actively studying cassowaries, we don't have as much data about their evolution as we'd like. Well, a couple years ago, they found a dinosaur that really looks a lot like this bird. There are a lot of similarities, from the impressive crest on the head to the long neck and ostrich-like body. This skeleton was discovered in southern China. And although the find has not yet been thoroughly analyzed, it's quite possible that, yes, such dinosaurs could get stuck in Australia and eventually evolve into cassowaries. But why did the cassowaries decide to stop evolving? Evolution can be quite flexible, and they could have transformed into something entirely different. Most likely, cassowaries occupied their niche here, and there was no need to change it. For one thing, the lack of predators allowed the cassowaries to become large and flightless. That's convenient. And secondly, these birds proved to be perfect for the place where they settled. The rainforests where cassowaries live are estimated to be 180 million years old. They're the oldest surviving rainforests on Earth. And as strange as it may sound, these forests owe much of their longevity and vastness to cassowaries. It's simple. The birds eat fruits, some of which are poisonous to other animals, and scatter seeds with their droppings throughout the forest. And this happens over a large area, which means that the rainforests have continued to do well for centuries now. Okay, who haven't we mentioned yet? Oh, that's right, frogs. So this is what frogs look like elsewhere. Typical, cute, mostly green. Here's what the frogs started to look like when they got to Australia. Yes, this pink lump of jelly is actually a frog that's given up almost everything that's basically associated with the frog. Instead, the animal has chosen to live in the desert digging burrows. This is what regular frogs look like when they find themselves in places with scarce moisture. But the turtle frog is a most unusual animal. For one thing, if you see one, you're probably in the middle of the Australian desert. The turtle frog prefers to live on sandy and loose soil, and it also looks like a piece of raw meat that someone has glued eyes on. Another interesting fact about the turtle frog is that it skips the tadpole stage, unlike many other frogs. Due to the scarcity of water bodies in the desert, the turtle frog patiently awaits heavy rains. When it finally rains, the frog emerges to mate and lay eggs from which tiny yet fully developed frogs hatch. So there are no tadpoles around, and no one's doing any swimming. To really grasp why this frog is so unique, you'd have to ask zoologists. You see, the turtle frog has a unique way of digging in the sand. It uses its front legs instead of its hind legs. That may not seem like a big deal, but for regular frogs, using their strong hind legs to scoop up soil is the way to go. However, the turtle frog's hind legs have actually become shorter and weaker over time, so now this frog is kind of a jock. And it's this small change in behavior that sets it apart as the least frog-like of them all. It's not just about looks or size. A turtle frog doesn't even have a frog body. So why did it get that way? The answer's still the same. When Australia separated from the rest of the world, blah, 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 you get it. It got hot. The frog had no choice, and now it's like this. It's better than going extinct anyway. And just when you thought the quirkiness of Australia had reached its peak with the jock frog, evolution surprises us with the giant skink. About 1,500 species of lizard living on Earth belong to the skink family. These are small reptiles with short legs and without anything resembling a neck in the usual sense. These stocky little creatures are found just about everywhere. Not that it's surprising that the largest skink known to exist in history was just recently discovered where many other giant creatures once roamed, in Australia. Scientists found an unusually large skull and jaw that looked like the remains of a lizard in caves in New South Wales. Analysis has shown that the two bones belong to an extinct species of skink, a species that until now had never been known to science. The new species, nicknamed megachunk and chunkosaurus by the scientists, is much larger than modern skinks. The typical skink is around 4 inches long and weighs less than 0.1 ounce. However, this newly found buddy reached a length of 22 inches and weighed about 6 pounds, making it approximately 1,000 times larger than its descendants. The closest living relative of this extinct giant looks like this. It's a shingleback skink. Sturdy, about 12 inches long, but still not quite as big as Chunkosaurus. The explanation behind its gigantism is pretty simple.
It's like a repeating pattern. Not many predators around, but plenty of food available, so the lizard could grow big without any worries.
In the past, Australia used to be home to some really big animals. There were kangaroos weighing about 1,000 pounds, wombats that weighed about 2 tons, lizards measuring around 25 feet long, flightless birds weighing approximately 400 pounds, and tortoises as big as Volkswagens. That was Australia's past. Australia was also home to one of the largest eagles the world's ever seen. With a wingspan of about 10 feet, these magnificent birds have talons so powerful that they could snatch up even a koala or a small kangaroo for lunch. All these amazing animals used to live in Australia, and then 45,000 years ago, almost all of them suddenly became extinct. Why? Well, the whole lots of food, few predators thing got shaken up when humans appeared on the continent. Scientists have recently concluded that some of these large creatures that once roamed Australia didn't go extinct due to climate change as previously thought. It seems they were simply eaten or their habitat was destroyed. But let's leave humans aside. It's clear enough that mankind's always screwing things up. Australia, on the other hand, was and still is creating amazing animals and then doing weird things with them. Even the plants here still grow incredibly large. Hard to believe? But yes, it's all one single plant. And so's this, a single organism. Here it is again. Back in June 2022, there was news about scientists stumbling upon the biggest plant ever known. They found this incredible seagrass off the coast of Australia. It covers an enormous area of over 70 square miles, but that's not all. It managed to achieve this massive size by cloning itself multiple times. This plant, called Poseidon's ribbonweed or Posidonia australis, is about 4,500 years old, meaning it has had plenty of time to clone itself. The result may be the largest living organism in the world, and certainly the largest known example of cloning. Actually, the scientists were just studying seagrass to test for genetic diversity. Imagine how surprised they were when they found out that the vast underwater meadows were actually a single plant, and that plant had somehow learned to tolerate a wide range of temperatures, changing salinity, and extremely bright light. For any other plant, these conditions would be incredibly stressful. And this one does nothing and just keeps growing. This seagrass ain't bothered with regular reproduction, yet somehow it's managed to live an insanely long life. Picture this. It was already around when the Great Pyramid of Giza was built during the time the Iliad was written, and even when mammoths went extinct. And now it's just chilling in the shallow water.
Living its best life.
See you later.